My name is Chad Hoover.
My name is Brandon Overstreet.
My name is Russell Dillon.
My name is Alfonso Jack.
My name is Lisa Bennett.
I'm Jack Snore.
Cody Prather here.
My name is Matt Ball.
My name is Josh Carter.
My name is James Bush.
My name is Luke Stocking.
My name is Jeff Jones.
Brian Volpe.
My name is Jeff Hodge.
My name is Kevin Franklin.
My name is Jamie Clancy.
My name is Lonnie Ellaby.
My name is Randy Howell, and you're listening to the Faith and Fishing Podcast.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Faith and Fishing Podcast, the podcast that's bringing you the stories of how God is working in and through fishermen from all around the fishing community. We've got a jam-packed episode for you this time, but first let me apologize for my voice during this interview. I was dealing with daycare germs and sounded pretty rough, and during the intro and outro parts of this episode, we may get interrupted by some thunder, so just go along with it if it happens. I also wanted to apologize for being a little distracted at times during the interview. It doesn't come up through the recording, but one of my neighbors was playing really loud mariachi music, and the bass was like pounding in my chest, and I can't believe it didn't make it onto the podcast, but it was driving me insane. I don't really have much fishing news this time around, as I tend to be more willing to stay inside during the dog days of summer. And the past 2 weeks have just been insanely hot, with temperatures up into the hundreds some days, with heat indexes around 110. But yeah, so the product spotlight is going to be a little bit different this episode, because we have Joey Doza on the podcast from Jade's Jigs. So Joey is going to help me out with the product spotlight. And before we go further, I know I said that for the product spotlight, I would not be putting the spotlight on any products that I was representing or sponsored by, but let me assure you, at the time of this interview, that had not happened yet. It was actually after this interview that Joey reached out on doing that for you guys. So let me go ahead and put that out in the open. But yeah, we're going to dive deep into Jay's Jigs on that. But first, it's time to learn from my mistake. Learn from my mistake. If you have ever listened to the Serious Angler podcast, you know that Bailey asks his guest what their biggest weakness in fishing is. Now, before I go any further, let me tell you that if you have not listened to the Serious Angler podcast, check them out. They have some awesome content and have a lot of episodes to listen to. But yeah, going back to that question of biggest fishing weakness, mine is probably that I tend to, I just flat out do fish the past, and I do it often, too often. What I mean by that is I take what happened while fishing out on a particular body of water and make it far too important the next time I am fishing out on the water. So let me give you an example. I go out to one of my home lakes in the dead of winter, go out to where all the seagulls are diving and grabbing shad, find a school of suspending fish on my Garmin and fish for them for a little while. Now I might catch a fish or two out of that area, but odds are I won't, because I'm still trying to get there whenever it comes to cold water fishing and also deep water fishing. So combine those two, I'm very not good at it. So I give it a little while, and then I start paddling back towards the creek, even though I know that the deeper water on this shallow lake is where they will be when the water temps are that low. And I make it to the creek, and I start fishing, and I spend the rest of the day going up and down this creek, because at other times of the year that creek produces really well for me. And I am paying special attention to that one tree that I caught my PB underneath that one spring. And I end up not even being able to mark a single fish in that creek. Now this particular story did happen, and I like to think that I have gotten better since then, but it really wasn't that long ago. But it seems like no matter what body of water I go to fish, if I have been there before, I at least have one spot that I have to cast to, whether it makes sense or not, because I caught that one fish that one time. So learn from my mistake and fish the moment rather than the past. Of course, what we learned in the past can help us now, but there's a reason that the windshield is so much bigger than the rearview mirror. It's more important to pay attention to what is rather than what was. Now, when you get to the lake and you remember a particular outing that the weather was exactly the same as it is today, or in some way water conditions are the same or similar, by all means use that memory to get an idea of what will or will not work, but don't let it be the end-all be-all, and make sure that that context makes sense. All right. Like I said, things are going to be a tad different today, so let's go ahead and get Joey introduced. Savior Outdoors means peace of mind out on the water. Savior makes retrieval devices for fishing rods, bow fishing bows, action cams, and more, so when you drop your gear in the water, you can get it back, meaning that you don't have to panic when your gear goes in the drink. Check out SaviorOutdoors.com, that's SAVUR Outdoors.com, to learn more and to try them for yourselves. And since you're a Faith and Fishing listener, you'll get 15% off of your purchase whenever you use promo code FNFP15. So like I said, Joey is the owner of Jade's Jigs and is absolutely obsessed with finesse fishing. Now y'all know me, I am a power fisherman and finesse has just never been my game. Well, let me tell you that Joey and Jade's Jigs have given me a leg to stand on when it comes to finesse fishing. My finesse game definitely still needs a lot of work, but it has never been stronger. So when this episode is over, or heck right now, stop what you're doing and go over to jadesjigs.com. And while you're there, use promo code FNF10 to save 10% on that order. They have a really big selection of finesse jigs, and the best part is that they're lead free. Okay, the best part is that they catch fish like you wouldn't believe. I have fallen in love with the skirted finesse jigs, and let me tell you, the cross-eyed cricket color is a killer. But anyways, you are going to get to hear plenty more about Jade's Jigs, so let's jump into our conversation with Joey. Joey, man, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Cam. I really appreciate it. I love your podcast. You mixed two of my favorite things, Christian and fishing. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
Absolutely. So to get us started off, man, introduce yourself to our listeners. Tell us a little bit about you and about who Joey Doza is.
Well, I'm 42 years old. I lived in Southwest Missouri. I've been married for 21 years. I married my high school sweetheart. I don't know how she's put up with me this long. I'm also blessed to have two daughters. My oldest daughter is going to be starting college next fall, and my youngest daughter's in high school. I work full-time with the municipal fire department, and I'm also a paramedic and an RN, so I also work part-time for a hospital. And when I'm not working or when I'm not spending time with my family, I'm either making jigs. We own a small business called Jade's Jigs, or I'm out fishing. I have a true passion for fishing.
Awesome. So in each of our episodes, we usually do a product spotlight before we bring the guest on, but in this case, we're going to go ahead and do the product spotlight now, and we're going to talk about Jade's Jigs. Get Outdoors Pedal and Paddle in Greensboro, North Carolina offers a huge variety of kayaks, kayak accessories, stand-up paddle boards, and bikes and biking accessories from all your favorite brands like Yak Attack, Bonafide, NRS, Bending Branches, Kayak Cushion, Perception, Native, and many more. Get Outdoors offers demo days, rentals, repair and outfitting, expert rack installation, as well as courses to get you comfortable in your new boat. Check them out at shopgetoutdoors.com or stop by the shop and tell them Faith and Fishing sent you. So these are finesse lead-free jigs. So kind of tell us a little bit about Jade's Jigs and what the idea behind the brand is, and all of that good stuff.
Okay. Well, it was in 2017. There was a craze around our area with Ned rigs. I just kept hearing everything about Ned rigs. So I love the simplicity of the idea. Before that, I was always a crappie fisherman, so I had all the right gear. I had all all the right equipment. I tied on a Ned rig and I headed to the river, and I had the best fishing day that I had ever had. I mean, it was just amazing. I was hooked immediately. So I tried to figure out, what it would take to make my own jigs. And I started doing a lot of research, and I seen how dangerous lead was. And I really didn't want all that stuff in my house. So I found this alloy, which is bismuth and tin. It's a combination of the two. And I initially didn't do it for this reason, but come to find out, this alloy is perfect for finesse fishing. And the reason why is because it's less dense than lead. So you can fish a larger profile head, yet you keep that light weight of finesse jig, which is very beneficial in finesse fishing, in my opinion. So I started making the jigs. I figured out how to get them just the way I wanted them. And I started catching fish on them. And when you catch a fish on something that you made, it is just so rewarding. It's so fulfilling. So I was talking to my wife, and I said, you know what? I think we could probably sell these. And the timing was actually perfect because my youngest daughter, whose name is Jade, she's actually got a congenital brain malformation. And she's got a lot of developmental delays, and she was getting a little bit older to where one of us always needed to be home and be available for her. So my wife had actually cut back some at her work, and we just decided, when we're home with Jaden, we'll stay home and we'll make jigs. And we started selling these jigs online and started meeting just some great customers. Started having people reaching out to me and telling me about these fish that they were catching in all these different waters. And it was just so neat hearing about people catching fish on our jigs. And everything that we made, we just kept reinvesting into the jigs. And every year we keep getting more and more customers, and they keep telling their friends, and it's just been such a blessing to us.
That's awesome. So, kind of give us an idea of what products you offer.
We offer several variations, and most of them are like what people would call a Midwest finesse jig or a Ned rig. I've just got the basic jigs, and in my opinion, a true Ned rig is the lightest weight that you can possibly stand to fish with the smallest hook. It's so hard to convince people that they need to go smaller. I mean, if you look at any of Ned Cady's reports on Ned rig fishing, I mean, he just preaches that. And I still force myself to even fish lighter and smaller, and you'd be amazed at what you can catch, just finesse fishing. So that's kind of the whole idea of what the jig started around. And then they've evolved from there. We've got skirted variations of Ned rigs now. I've got several different styles and sizes of hooks. And the main thing that separates us from everybody else, other than the customer service, if you need something, when you call or you email, you're talking to me or my wife. I mean, you're going to get the customer service. But all of our jigs that we have, they're in stock. They're ready to go. I'll do custom orders, but I like people to have their jigs as soon as possible, and I hate being behind. So I've got the biggest variety of Ned rigs in stock of anybody else I've ever seen. So when you make an order, they're usually being shipped out the next day. And according to the postal service, or however fast they can get to you, usually they're there within a week.
That's awesome. So I'll share some of my experience with fishing these jigs. So most of my listeners know I am not a finesse fisherman. I am a power fisherman through and through. So forcing myself to slow down is not easy, but I figured if I was going to put finesse stuff to the test, the best place to do it would be a really pressured place. So I went to a little park that is not far from work. That every time I go, there's people throwing everything the kitchen sink into this pond trying to catch fish. So I tried a little bit of everything. Because I had to fish something fast at least once. So I used the low pro heads with the little white grub, and caught a bunch of fish on that, and was like, well, I need to actually slow down and fish finesse. So I went. I didn't really mean to do it. It's just the way this park is laid out. That's kind of the only way you can do it. You just kind of fish right behind the next person. I've fished right behind this guy who was fishing. I felt bad for him. He was fishing this gigantic, it was almost like a duck bait. It was like a big prop bait.
Yeah.
And he was fishing that, and I was fishing right behind him and catching little bass after little bass. I mean, there's nothing big in this pond, but but the fact that people were coming up to me and saying, I've never seen a fish that big, and I didn't even know there were fish in here. And it's like, you don't need to talk so loud. There's another guy fishing right there. But they definitely work. I was surprised. One of the things I was worried about with them being a less dense material was sensitivity. And I struggle with finesse baits not being sensitive enough to begin with, because like I said, I'm a power fisherman. I'm used to feeling everything. So it's I definitely didn't notice that they weren't sensitive. I just noticed that, as it is with all finesse stuff, I have to watch my line. I don't need to wait to feel it.
Yes.
So I need to switch out my spinning rods to high vis line so that I can see what's happening. But yeah, man. So kind of get into some kind of pros and cons of your stuff. So if you had to say that there's a con to your jigs, what would it be?
Just like what you were saying, it's hard to convince people to go that less is more. The main thing, in my opinion, with finesse fishing is light wire hooks, because, like you said, it's a no-feel technique. You're not feeling that bite. You're not doing a power hook set on it. The way I always explain it is you just kind of reel into the pressure. Like you feel that soft, mushy feeling, like you're kind of pulling it through mud.
Right.
And usually that means that a fish is just grabbed on. Well, on finesse tackle, you want that flex in a hook, and you want the light wire so it will penetrate through the fish's mouth without, just really setting the hook. So sometimes I'll get people who just don't understand. They're like, your hooks, they're too light, and but they're made like that for a reason. The light wire hooks, in my opinion, are superb. And then also, like on the skirted variations, it's the same principle. It's not like a big bass skirted jig. I do it kind of like a spider cut, and I have guys, you wouldn't believe the fish that some of my Midwest customers catch on these finesse jigs, just some monster smallies. But a lot of people want bigger, bulkier jigs, but I just have to convince them. I'm like, that less is more. You don't want that much flair. The whole point of finesse fishing is just to be subtle. And like you were talking about, the amount of bites that you get, I mean, it'll catch a lot of small fish, but it'll catch big fish too.
Absolutely.
It's just the technique. There's something about it that draws fish in every season of the year. I mean, winter, summer, spring, it just works. I don't know why, but I love it. I mean, I'm a finesse addict.
Now, I meant to ask earlier, but some of your hooks are the sickle-shaped hooks.
Yes.
Is there a particular benefit to having a sickle-shaped hook rather than a regular hook?
One thing I've discovered is everybody has their own preferences. Some people are diehard sickle hook guys. Other people say, oh, I've got to have a 90-degree hook. And it's the same way with the sizes and the weights. We've tried limiting some of our variations, but as soon as we take one off, I'll have somebody contact me and they're like, why did you get rid of my favorite jig? Like they're like, that's the only one that I want, the only one that I'll use. So I think it's more of just a matter of personal preference. But some of the benefits possibly to a sickle hook, if you look at the way the point is, it's slightly curved inward. So some people say that those hooks stay sharper a little bit longer because that point's protected from rocks and other debris as you're letting the jig work on the bottom. That sickle bend also, some people think that whenever you hook a fish, that bend not only helps for the hook penetration, but it also helps prevent that fish from throwing the hook. Now, I've used both of them. I love them both, and I personally can't tell a difference. I'm not able to fish every day either and test them every day, but I love them both. What I do is usually the jigs that have flaws, I put in my tackle box. I don't care what color they are. I don't care which style of hook they are. They all catch fish to me just as well.
Okay, absolutely. Do you have a particular Ned bait that you think that you prefer over others?
That's the same as everything else. Z-Man is awesome. That Elastec is great, not only for the durability, but it's very buoyant. But I use all baits. I use robo worms. I use any type of bait that you could imagine I've used, and I've caught fish on all of them. So I can't say that one outperforms the other. There is a little trick though with Elastec. Most of my jigs have these wire keepers, which hold baits really good, especially just regular plastic baits. But that Elastec, it's so stretchy that a lot of people will pull that Elastec up to the jig head and they'll actually super glue it on because they're afraid that Elastec will slide down, that it will stretch down the hook, and they have to keep readjusting it. I almost gave up on Elastec because I was so tired of super gluing all my baits. Well, I had a great customer. His name's Brian Jackson. He showed me one day, he was like, all you have to do is take that Elastec and you just exaggerate the stretch over the wire keeper. You take the end of the bait and you almost pull it away from the wire keeper and up over the top of the jig head. And when it snaps back into place, that wire keeper grabs on to the Elastec. I never use super glue anymore. I mean, it worked fantastic. And it was just one simple thing that I never even knew worked.
That's awesome.
But they all work. I mean, I can't, say one works over the other. Something I've been doing lately, especially when I'm lake fishing, is I've been using more of a swimming style bait. I've been using a lot of Jean LaRue slider baits. They've got a little paddle tail on them, but instead of fishing like a swim bait, I'll fish it like a Ned. I'll just kind of dead stick it and work it off the drops on the lake. And those little swimming style baits have worked really good for me on the lakes the last couple of years.
Awesome. All right, and one thing you mentioned to me, and I did notice it, the paint does chip pretty easily.
Yes.
But I mean, that doesn't bother me because I'm kind of like you. It doesn't. I don't pay that much attention to the color because a silver jig head will work just as well as a red one or as a chartreuse one. But I did want you to kind of defend that a little bit if you needed to.
Sure. No. We use powder paint and we cure them onto the jigs, and it does make them durable. But the one thing about that with the powder paint, if you get one little chip, which if you're fishing a Ned rig like you should, dragging it on the bottom, you're going to get a little chip eventually on that jig head. But once you get that chip in the jig head, it pretty much ruins the integrity of that whole paint because it's baked on, it's cured as one piece. So, unfortunately, once that chip occurs, the integrity of the paint is pretty much gone. And we thought about it, and the only way that we could really increase that integrity is to do like an enamel clear coat over the top of them. But that would be so time consuming. And, in order to just be competitive with the lead guys, I mean, we would have to charge so much for the jigs, with that enamel clear coat that it really wouldn't be feasible. And like you were saying, I mean, I think sometimes the paint on the jig heads, does attract the fish. But a lot of times, I mean, it's just kind of an abstract color. I think more of your bites are coming from the actual bait than the color of the head. And another thing is, I fish a lot of jig heads all day long, and I never really lose the paint. And it just depends on how you're fishing. But a lot of times, a way to gauge if you're fishing too big of a jig is if you're losing the paint really fast. If you take a 1/4 ounce head and you're casting it, in 6 inches to 3 feet of water, that jig head's just going to be knocking against the rocks, and you're going to lose the paint almost immediately. So a lot of times when I'm fishing, I mean, I'll go as light as 1/32 ounce head. If I'm fishing deeper, like I'll go up to 12, 15, 20 foot of water with a 1/8 ounce head. And if I use those lighter weights, it takes a long time for me to really wear that paint down.
Absolutely. And if you are someone who does care an awful lot about the color of your jig heads, I'll say this: a little bit of like clear coat fingernail polish will go a long way to make that last a lot longer. So
I've heard of people too, like putting super glue over the top of them. And another big thing that we advertise about our jigs with the paint, I always found it annoying when I'd buy jig heads and the eyes would be covered up with paint.
Yes.
But that's one thing that we make sure all of our jig head eyes are clear of paint, because once that's baked on, it's almost impossible to clean those eyes out. So I don't want anybody to be on the water trying to retie a jig and have to try to get the line through the eye with paint in it.
That was the first thing I checked whenever I opened the box. Whenever I got ours, was to check to see if the eyes were clear, because that's something that drives me insane.
Yeah.
I apologize. I don't know where that music's coming from.
Oh, I don't even hear it.
Okay. It's kind of the bass of like mariachi music or something. I thought it was like a car driving by, but it's been here for a while, so I was just kind of trying to figure out where that was coming from. But anyway, so that's Jade's Jigs. Let's talk about Joey Doza. So what was it that got you into fishing, man?
I've just grown up fishing my whole life. My dad took me when I was little fishing, and I've always loved to do it. And I'd had times where, I would fish more than others, but mainly like when I got into high school and in college, I used to hunt a lot more, and I just had a true passion for hunting. But then I'd say when my girls started getting a little bit older and life just started getting hectic, I really didn't have time to, do everything that it took to invest in hunting. So I would just go to the creek and I'd start fishing, and it just grew from there. And now, I mean, I don't even hunt anymore. It's all I do is fish.
I hear you. So, let's dive into the faith side of things. So, in a nutshell, tell us what it is that you believe in, and kind of what was it that brought you to the point of believing that.
Okay, well, I believe that the Lord Christ is a one and only Savior, and I'm very blessed. I've grown up in a Christian home. I've always believed in God, and of course, there's been times where I've been stronger and weaker, but I just feel like my faith, it matures every day. And unfortunately, with my jobs, I see a lot of tragedy. And I just think that you have to have faith in this world to realize that there's so much more to this earth than what's down here. I mean, there's just so many bad things right now and so many things that are down, but you just got to keep your head up and realize that there's more to life. I mean, God is there, and He's alive, and He's there for us. I mean, if we need anything, we just look to Him. We ask for help.
That's awesome. And I'm sorry, I may have missed it there, but did you say that this was kind of something that you grew up in?
The Christian?
Yeah.
Yes, yep. I've went to church my whole life. My parents were great. I mean, I've always believed in God, and just like I said, my faith has just matured over time, and I just feel very blessed.
That's awesome. So was it a slow and steady growth, or was there a particular moment you can think of where everything kind of became real, and it wasn't just something that you did on Sunday morning anymore? You just realized that, or something happened that made you realize this is real. This is something big.
I can't say there's ever been like one particular moment where there was just a dramatic change. I would say that my faith has always been strong, but throughout life, marriage, just the difficulties of life, having a special needs child, which most people don't even know about Jade, my youngest daughter. And I don't tell people that because I want sympathy or anything about like that, but it's just our life. It's just what we deal with. I wouldn't change anything in the world. I come home and she still wants to hug me and kiss me. My older daughter, not so much anymore. But yeah, I've made mistakes throughout life, and I think the difference between failing and passing in life is overcoming those failures and learning from your mistakes, and looking to God and praying and just trying to better yourself every day. We'll never get to where we're perfect or we're at the highest level. I mean, we're all sinners and we're all going to make mistakes, but it's what you do with those, I think, that makes a difference.
Absolutely. And how old is Jaden?
Jaden is 17 now.
Okay.
And the best way I could describe her mentality, she's probably mindset in most things about like a 3 or 4 year old.
Okay.
So she's got some minor just physical problems. Her major thing is she has seizures, which they're well controlled right now, but we've had some crisis in the past that really makes you step back and just look at life. And when you have something like that in life, I mean, you just really think about what matters. And when it comes down to that, it's all about God and family. I mean, those are the two things that are what we're here for.
Awesome. So where is it that faith and fishing collide for you? Like, where is it that those two meet?
I think they go hand in hand, and that's why I love fishing so much. But every time I'm on the water, I mean, my faith is just renewed. My soul opens up. I mean, to be out there in nature and watch the sun come up over the water or the sun come down, it's unexplainable. It's just God's creation and being in it. And a lot of times I actually have to slow down from fishing because sometimes I'll get so focused on catching the fish or paying attention to the water, and I forget why I'm really out there and why I really enjoy it. And it's because of God and His creation. And I try to make a point of it, and a lot of times I forget to do it. But whether I catch a little bluegill or I catch a 20-inch smallmouth, I always try to say a little thank you to God, just for giving me that day, giving me that catch. It's a good way to remind myself why I'm out there. I just think that they go hand in hand. And I kind of get a double blessing too, because with the jigs, I get people contacting me every day. They're like, look at this fish that I caught, or giving me some awesome story. And I think that's a blessing too. Like, I can be at work, I can be having the worst day ever, and if somebody contacts me and tells me about a fishing story or something great that they did for that day, it uplifts my whole spirit.
That's awesome. So This is the question everybody loves to hear. What fishing story or memory means the most to you?
There's a lot of great stories. Like I've never had a bad day on the water. In fact, some of the bad days are the stories that you remember the most. You know, those bad trips are the ones you'll never forget. But I remember one day in particular, my dad, and I think this is why I enjoy river fishing so much, but he used to take me on these 2 and 3 night camping trips, floating and fishing on the river. We would just pack up the canoes and a flat bottom boat, and wherever we were, we would find a gravel bar and we'd set up camp and we would fish, and that was just so much fun to me as a young boy growing up. And I remember when I got a little bit older, my dad trusted me enough to navigate the water in my own canoe and to haul my own gear. And I don't even know how old I was, but I felt so proud that he had faith in me to do that. And I remember we were going through a riffle, and at the end of this riffle, there was a big eddy. And at that time, I guess we were finesse fishing, but all that we threw were white rooster tails, which catch everything. I mean, but they'll catch some really good smallmouth too. But I remember going through this riffle, and I navigated it perfectly all on my own. I ended up haphazardly throwing this rooster tail over my shoulder into the eddy. It somehow landed perfectly behind this big rock, and this huge smallmouth just grabbed it. And he actually turned my canoe. I was facing upriver. It felt like I fought this fish for 5 minutes. I'm sure it was just a couple seconds, and it probably really wasn't even that big, but to me it seemed like it was huge. So anyways, I landed this fish, and my dad was behind me. He was coming through the riffle and past me as I caught this fish. And I still remember the look on his face when he seen me land that and catch it by myself. And for some reason that memory has just stuck with me throughout. It's why I think it's so important to take kids fishing.
That's awesome. Yeah. So are you still fishing mostly out of a canoe?
I do everything. I've got a canoe, a kayak. I'm blessed where I live. I've got some great rivers and creeks that have some amazing smallmouth in them, but I'm also close to some world-class fisheries too. I'm about an hour from Taylor Rock Lake. There's Stockton Lake, Pomme de Terre Lake. So I fish all of them. The river's the closest for me, and my time is so limited. That's where I go the most. And in all reality, the river fishing's probably my favorite. There's just something about being in any type of paddlecraft, navigating the water on your own. You just feel like you're with the water. You feel like you're with the environment. You're with God. And when you feel that pull of a fish and it pulls your kayak around, there's nothing better than that. But I do lake fish a lot. I used to mainly just crappie fish when I went lake fishing, because that's really all my dad does. But I bought a little 1448 Grizzly tracker a couple years ago, and I'll take it to the lake, not on busy times, but on off real early in the morning or real late in the evenings when all the leisure boaters are away. And I've really started figuring out the finesse tactics on big bodies of water also.
Awesome. Yeah, I have to agree with you about paddling and being close to God's creation and stuff. I mean, it can sometimes not be a great thing whenever you get too close to certain nature, but the one that always gets me is the great blue herons, because they're so good at camouflage and stealth that you don't know they're there until you're right up on them, and they don't know you're there until you're right up on them, and like they take off and scare the snot out of you, screaming like a pterodactyl.
I've had that. I've been on the water too when it's dark, like daylight or dusk, and when those beaver, when they slap their tail in the water,
my goodness,
that
yes,
will rattle your bones too.
Yes, that's another one that just will scare the snot out of you.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, so whenever you're out fishing with somebody, what's your typical conversation centered around? Usually we're just breaking down the technique of the day.
I love to try to figure the pattern out. And sometimes I don't even really know if it matters, but there's certain days that they'll only bite in a certain color. There's times I can't get them to hit a 1/16 ounce jig, but they'll start hitting a 3/32 or 1/8, like just the difference in the fall rate. So usually when I'm fishing with somebody else, we're just kind of breaking down what's working for the day, what we should be trying, what we should be doing. And I really think that's what makes fishing so fun. I think if you just went out there every day and it was the same thing and you could catch as many fish as you wanted, however you wanted to, it wouldn't be fun. I mean, it's so neat trying to figure them out and break it down.
That's awesome. So let's say you're out with someone who has never fished a Ned rig or never finesse fished, and you have to give them one piece of advice to get them started. What's that advice going to be?
You know, it's actually pretty simple with a Ned rig because you just pretty much do nothing. The less you do, the better. Now, there's a lot more to it, especially when you're fishing in current. It's just like trout fishing. The more natural you can get that bait, the more natural the drift you can get, the better you're going to be. So whenever I'm with people, I try to coach them like where those pockets of water are, how to mainly control their line to get that natural drift and to get the perfect presentation to the fish, and just explaining the tactics to them as far as that goes. And I think that goes with any technique. I mean, if it's not natural, I know sometimes you can get a reaction bite, but I think that's a natural bite too. I mean, there's times that, crawdads or a bait fish is fleeing, and that can create just a reaction to whatever you're fishing for. So, I love teaching people, and I'm trying to get more into that. A lot of times, like I said, my time's so limited. I really don't have time to plan and invite people, and everybody's lives are so busy. It's just hard to coordinate, but I'm trying to get better about taking people and teaching people because I enjoy that so much.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm going to have to be reaching out to you with asking for all kinds of advice on finesse stuff, man. Because like what you just said, that's definitely my weakness with the Ned rig, because I mean, the very first time I fished a Ned rig, I don't think it touched the bottom. Like, yeah, the entire day I fished it, I just kind of like twitched it back and like reeled it almost as fast as I would a crankbait and just twitch it the whole time. And I still caught fish that day. That's the crazy thing.
Well, and that is a technique. I mean, and it's very effective. I actually listened to Ned Cady. He did a little interview. There's a wonderful Facebook group called Finesse News Network. And it's a bunch, I think it started out from some original Ned rig followers, and they're all about finesse fishing, Ned rig, anything finesse. But they actually just, it's probably a month ago, had Ned Cady come on there for an interview. And I've talked to Ned, I've listened to his videos, and he always gives the swim, glide, and shake technique. And that's what I do a lot, but I always assumed when he was talking about that he was letting the bait actually go to the bottom and just pretty much, polishing the rocks with it. I mean, he'd pick it up and swim it just little bits and then mainly let it sit on the bottom. But he said during this interview that he very rarely keeps his bait on the bottom, that he's usually just kind of swimming it and letting it glide through the water column towards the bottom as he slightly shakes his line, which gives that bait action, and then he'll start swimming in it again. Which blew my mind, because the way I've thought that you always fish a Ned rig for years is by just pretty much doing nothing and letting it sit on the bottom. And I catch a lot of fish doing that, but Ned Cady doesn't do that all the time. I'm sure he does it some.
Okay, so you've mentioned Ned Cady a few times. That is Ned Cady the Ned from Ned rig?
He is, and he is the most unselfish giver of fishing knowledge that I have ever met. When I first started selling these, I got an email, and it was from Ned Cady, and he was wanting to do an article on my jigs in the Finesse magazine. And we had just started. I thought it was a joke. I thought it was some scammer or somebody. Like, there's no way that Ned Cady is contacting me. Ever since that article, I mean, we've coordinated mainly just through email, and I've gotten to know some of his associates through that as well. He's the most humble, down-to-earth guy. I think if anybody went down there, he would take him fishing. He has no secrets. He doesn't even like it when people call this style or these jigs Ned rigs, because he's just very humble. But if I had half the knowledge he had on fishing, he's just my idol. The way he lives his life and he shares the information, and he just does it because he loves it. And he's a genius. If you read any of his reports, they're the most meticulous, broken down fishing reports that you could ever imagine.
That's awesome. So, yeah, I've heard about him a lot, but I haven't heard anything from him yet. So I'm going to have to find
he's
some
very
stuff.
quiet. He used to do articles on in Fisherman. There was a finesse column on there. I think he may do something through Z-Man now. I'm not really for sure. Well, he'll give reports, but like I said, he's very humble. Like he's Ned. He's Ned of the Ned rig. You know how big that is. He could be anything or do anything he wanted to with it. He just wants to fish and share his knowledge. That's all he wants to do. He's an amazing guy.
Yeah, and I can't imagine the feeling of like getting an email from your idol, like
yeah,
wanting to interview
I
you.
still didn't. I was very skeptical. I didn't believe it was him.
That's awesome. Yeah, I never been in that situation. Probably never will. But that would.
Well, you talk about just. I do. I think sometimes things happen in life for a reason. Through God, I don't know why, but for him to reach out to me like that, and with everything going on, and as much passion that I have for these jigs, I mean, I still get people who contact me from the article that he wrote on our jigs 4 years ago. I mean, that's how influential he is. It's amazing.
That's awesome. So, do you typically just fish local, or have you gotten to travel to do fishing?
I mainly just stay local. With my schedule so hectic, and even with the jigs, and like I said, I've never really traveled anywhere, but I get to travel through all my customers. I've got so many bucket list places where I would love to go. I mean, it's so neat. I'm getting messages from guys all over the United States just telling me about these fish, which is amazing. But in all reality, where I live, I'm sure there are places that are better, but I would say the waters that I fish are world class. They're just as good as anywhere else you could go.
So, are you near the Ozarks then?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm really close to Springfield, Missouri. Or
Okay.
a lot of people probably have heard of Branson, Missouri, and Table Rock Lake. I'm about an hour from there.
Gotcha. So you mentioned that you've kind of started seeing a bunch of these spots that would be considered bucket list spots. Is there one that sits at the top of your bucket list?
If I had to choose one, I mean, I just love to fish. I really, I would be just as happy on a fishing pond. But anywhere up north, like especially like the Canadian border waters, those just pristine waters that are untouched, where you can get out there and just disappear. I mean, that would be a bucket list trip for me.
Absolutely. What about a particular fish? Is there a particular fish you haven't caught yet that sits at the top of your bucket list?
In my opinion, there's nothing better than a smallmouth, but if I would have to choose one, it would be something similar to like a native river fish. I think like one of the native river salmons would be really fun to catch. But really, other than smallmouth, if I could catch those all day long, I would be happy.
That's awesome. You ever think about taking your jigs and trying to catch some big saltwater fish on them?
I have not myself, but I've had customers who use them in saltwater, and it's crazy to think about it. I don't really know much about saltwater fishing at all, but they're out there in a huge ocean catching these saltwater fish with my jigs just blows my mind.
That's awesome. So where are these customers fishing from?
I don't even know exactly where or what they're fishing for. I've just had people contact me and say, hey, I'm using these. I make trips out to the ocean and I use your jigs, and I couldn't even tell you specifically where or what, but
okay. If I ever get a chance, I'll have to give that a shot.
Yeah.
I don't live as close to the beach as I used to, but I still try to make it out there every now and then.
Yeah.
All right, man. So with all of our guests, we do a what's your favorite segment. It's pretty self-explanatory, but I'll ask you your favorite in a few different categories here. All right. So what is your favorite scripture?
It would be John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. And the reason I choose that one is because it's everything. We're all sinners and we fall short of the glory of God. And without Jesus Christ and his sacrifice, there would be no point in life. I mean, that is everything that I base my life on.
Absolutely. So, what about a particular story from the Bible? Is there one of those that's your favorite?
Oh, I would have to say David and Goliath. The fact that David had the courage just to stand up in front of that giant through faith in God. I can just picture him standing out there in the line of battle and all the other soldiers trembling in fear, and him going out there and defeating the giant. I mean, that to me, the scene of that is just, it gives me goosebumps.
Absolutely. There's a pastor friend of mine that I just adore him. His name is Andy Lambert. If you ever get a chance, look up on YouTube or something, Andy Lambert doing I think it's just called David and the Giggle by it.
Okay.
And he tells the story of David and Goliath, but he gets all of the like first letters backwards on everything. Because he does a lot of like stand-up comedy while he's preaching and stuff.
Yeah.
And it is absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, I'll check that out.
All right, so I think you've already told me this, but what's your favorite fish to catch?
It would be smallmouth, but I love to catch everything. You hear some people, they'll get mad if they catch a little bluegill or just a little fun fish. I just love to catch fish. I mean, smallmouth is obviously my favorite, but I still do crappie fish a lot. I love sitting in the boat with my dad and using a bobber and a minnow. I enjoy that just as much as anything. In the spring, when the white bass make their run upriver, I always chase the spring white bass run. That is so fun around here. So I just kind of follow the seasons, and whatever's biting, I'm usually chasing.
I hear you. So if smallmouth is your favorite to catch, what's your favorite to fish for?
It would probably have to be the smallmouth, and mainly, like I was saying before, just because of being on the paddle craft, on the water, with the current. There's just something so natural about that you can't replicate that in a boat, on a lake, on a huge body of water. I can catch a lot bigger fish on the lake at times, but there's just something about being in moving water you can't be beat.
Absolutely. And what about your favorite fish to eat?
I'm the same way. I'm not picky. I'll eat a lot of the crappie that we catch, white bass and walleye. Obviously, all of my smallmouth and all my bass on the lakes, I always catch and release all of those. But I'll tell you a story. This spring, I was chasing the white bass up the river, and I caught a walleye, a white bass, and even a crappie. And I've gotten to where now I used to always just fry the fish. I was always afraid to just bake one and eat one without the breading, without it soaking in oil. Well, I started baking my crappie here within the last year, and they're delicious. I mean, I almost feel mad that I spent all these years frying crappie when they're so good baked. But white bass sometimes have a bad rap. You know, everybody's like, there's so many times I'm on the river and they're like, well, I love to catch them, but I hate to eat them. So I took all three of these fish, and the texture and the size of the fillets were obviously different, but they were all delicious. I mean, maybe I'm just simple and I can't, my taste buds aren't that good, but I baked them. I didn't fry them, and I love them all. I'm really not picky.
I hear you. I haven't tried baking crappie yet because I just love them fried so much. But
yeah,
I do bake some of the ocean fish that I catch, like bluefish. People call bluefish trash fish too. If you clean them right and season those right, they are some of the tastiest fish out there to me.
I think that's a big part of it, is you have to take care of them. And I don't know if they're like white bass, but they've got kind of the dark streak that runs through them, and you have to cut that out. And they're delicious, I think.
That's the big thing with the blues, is you got to get rid of the dark meat. But
yeah,
they're great. But while we're talking about eating, what's your favorite snack to eat while you're fishing?
I'm pretty simple on the river. Usually I just pack a sandwich and a soda, ham sandwich and Cheez-Its. But if I'm doing an overnight river trip, my tackle, and usually when I'm on the river, I try to test all of my stuff. That's what's fun about it, is discovering which jigs work in which situations. So I'm loaded down with rods, reels, tackle. So I have very little room for food. And like this last weekend, I just did a 2-night overnight trip on the river. So I didn't even bring a cooler. I didn't bring any ice. What I like to do is I'll just bring canned items, and I'll put them in one of my dry boxes, and I'll do canned chili, canned tamales. And there is nothing better than sitting by a campfire in the middle of the night, and all you have to do is take that canned chili or canned tamales and sit it next to the coals on the fire, let it warm up. I mean, it's just so simple. You don't have to worry about ice, and it's delicious. When you're sitting on the gravel bar, I think anything's good, but
for sure,
simpler is better.
I went fishing with a guy one time who his snack of choice was he would take a pack of the bacon, the country bacon flavored instant grits. And he would suck on those all day until they got soft, and then he would eat those and put some more in his mouth.
Whatever works.
Yeah. Drew Gregory said that he eats just a can of Progresso soup, just straight out of the can.
Yeah.
So I heard all kinds of crazy stuff. But yeah, so I won't ask for...
Yeah, but when I'm on the water, I am so in tune with fishing and nature. Like, I don't even get hungry. I don't even really think about food. Sometimes I have to stop and force myself to eat if I'm out there for a long time.
But 100%.
It is enjoyable. I mean, there's nothing better than a ham sandwich on a gravel bar.
Yeah,
everything's better on the river.
For sure. I just recently got the cooler that straps to the back of my kayak seat, and before that I would have the cooler like farther behind me. So yeah. I'm just now getting to the point where I'll actually drink water on the water. So.
Yeah.
Because
that's a big thing. I try to always make sure I'm hydrated, and especially like this time of year, it's so hot sure. Now. If you get behind on your hydration, you can get in trouble really fast.
So what's your heat like there in Missouri?
We've been in the 90s within the last week, and in fact, we've had a crazy spring. We've had a lot of heavy rains, and the rivers have just stabilized enough to where we've actually been able to get on them and consistently catch fish. So even though it's super hot, I think the fish are just now kind of getting into their pattern, and they're starting to bite really good. But it's pretty miserable out there, afternoon hours. But the bite slows down. However, you can still find them out there, even in the middle of the day. I mean, if you finesse them, I can't use anything else and catch them. But if you slow down and you find that shaded pocket of water that's got current nearby, they'll eat it if you put it in front of them.
For sure. And is there where you are? Is it a dry heat, or is it a really, really muggy heat?
Yeah, it's really muggy. It's really humid here.
Yeah, it's like that here too in North Carolina. It's always like we're walking underwater.
Yeah.
All right, so I won't ask for GPS coordinates or secret spots, but what's your favorite body of water to fish?
For me, we're talking about the bucket list. There's a lot of places that are probably better fisheries, but I would have to say the James River, which is close to me. It's a tributary of Table Rock Lake, and it's the river I go on to fish for smallies. But I know that river like my backyard. I mean, it's the closest place where I can go and get my kayak on the water. So for that reason alone, it's my favorite fishery. I mean, I know where to go. I know where the holes are. I mean, I have to force myself to go to other places because I just love it so much.
That's awesome. And I know they say there's no such thing as a stupid question, but this next question just seems like a stupid question to me. What's your favorite lure to throw?
Reluctantly, I throw them all, but I got another funny story about this weekend. I have yet to land my 20-inch river smallie. I've gotten some that are 19, some that are super close, but I was coming up to where there was a tributary, and it's a spring-fed creek that flows into the James River. And the water was just super clear there. You could tell that it was cold. And I was just like, with the heat and as hot as this water is, I bet the fish are just schooled up at the mouth of this tributary, soaking up that cool, fresh, oxygenated creek water. And the water was moving pretty fast right there. And I didn't really have a chance to stop and pick it apart with finesse tactics. So I had a wiggle wart, and I cast it across the current. And as I was reeling it through that current, my line just stopped, and my kayak pointed straight upriver, and this fish started pulling me upriver across the current. I couldn't even turn it. Well, it got up to the mouth of that creek where the water was clear, and I could see it. It was a smallmouth, and it was huge. I can't even guesstimate how big it was. And the first thing I thought of was I'm going to get my 20-inch smallie today on this wiggle wart. Well, it did one head shake and immediately broke off. And I was disappointed that I didn't land my 20-inch smallmouth. But in all reality, I was kind of happy that I didn't, because I want my personal best to be on one of my jigs, on a finesse jig. To me, it's like the difference between rifle hunting and bow hunting. I mean, to catch a fish on a bait caster with a heavy rod, I mean, it's rewarding and it's fun. But if you catch a 20-inch river smallmouth on finesse gear, and you feel that pull and you have to work it and get it to the boat, I mean, it's just a feeling that can't be beat. It's so amazing.
For sure. And so what kind of what pound test are you throwing your finesse stuff on?
A lot of my stuff, like you were saying, I'll use braid to like a fluoroliter, or I've been using some the Copoly line. I'm not even for sure exactly what brand I've got on right now, but usually I'll do like a high vis 10-pound braid line, and I'll tie about a 6-foot leader or so with 6-pound line. A lot of our fisheries, like Table Rock Lake, have super clear water, and I don't know how big of a difference it makes to the bass, but I just feel like if I go heavier than 6-pound line, that it's not even as far as spooking the fish, but you get so much more action out of that jig. A lot of times I'm throwing 1/16, 1/32 ounce jigs, and you'd be amazed at just the difference of action that you get between 6-pound line and 8-pound line. The sink rate, the way it moves with the current, I just think the the lighter you can get away with, the better. You get a lot more natural presentation.
Okay. I meant to ask that earlier, and it just kind of popped back into my head, so I wanted to make sure that I asked it. And last but not least, man, what's your favorite time of year to fish?
The spring is nice, but like I was saying about our season this year, just with the wild fluctuations and the rain and the weather, really my favorite time to fish is in the fall when it starts to cool off again, the leaves start turning color. The bite it is just as good, if not better, than the spring. But especially around here, the weather is so much more consistent. You can find a pattern and you can stay on those fish for a lot longer. In the springtime, it fluctuates from one day to the next. I mean, according to what fronts are coming through and how high the water levels are. And when you're on the water and those leaves start changing color, I mean, it's just so nice to be out there. It's usually about the time that the deer hunting starts getting really good and people start getting off the water too. So you've got a lot of the water to yourself, which is probably why I don't deer hunt anymore.
Absolutely. I love whenever football season starts.
Yeah.
And all of the bass boats decide they would rather stay and watch football.
Yeah.
That's whenever I'm like, yeah.
Well, and I always encourage people to take their kids fishing too, but when school starts up too, and those nights start cooling off, it seems like something just sparks in those fish.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, we're going to start wrapping things up. So if you would, let us know what do you have coming up for you, and what's coming up for Jade's Jigs.
No major plans in the near future, but I always love input from people to give me ideas. Pretty much every new thing that I've came up with has came from a suggestion from a customer. Over this last year, I started making the EWG Ned rigs, and I added a lot new skirted variations to our inventory, and those have just taken off. Unbelievable. I mean, those skirted jigs and EWGs have really been a big hit. So I can usually spend the winter time, and that's when I develop new things and new items, and we're just small. I don't do anything huge, but man, if somebody's got any finesse ideas, throw them at me, because I would love to try it and see if I can make something work.
For sure. And do you or Jade's Jigs have any sponsors or supporters you want to give a shout out to, or anybody that you want to say thank you to? Just my family and all of my return customers. I can personally say that, like, these people who reach out to me and they talk to me, that they are honestly my friends. I used to make fun of people who had internet friends. I've got more internet friends now, fishing customers that I talk to daily, that I know without a doubt that I could probably travel all over the United States and have a fishing partner or a boat to be in to go fishing with. I mean, it has been just such a fresh breath of air meeting all of these kind people. I see a lot of bad in the world with my job, and sometimes you just kind of lose faith in humanity. And throughout this business, I mean, it's renewed my spirit. It's been so great. So I would love to just thank all of my customers, and all my supporters. Everything that we have done, that we started with, has been through our own investment, our own time. But the reason I do it is for my customers. Absolutely. That's awesome. I have to ditto that. I used to make fun of the idea of internet friends too, and through this podcast, I'm in the same boat as you are. If I'm like on my way home from work and I want to call someone, I typically am calling somebody that I've never seen face to face. But yeah, I've really, really excited about the relationships I've been able to build through this and all of that good stuff. But if our listeners want to get in touch with you or follow you on social media, buy some finesse jigs, how do they find you?
All right. The best way is through our website, which is jadesjigs.com. That's JADESJIG. Let me start over.
Okay.
It's Jades, JADES, Jigs, JIGS.com. And we also are on Instagram and Facebook. If you just search Jade's Jigs, you'll be able to find us. And anybody can call me, text me at any time. If I'm at work, I work long hours, I'll get a hold of you as soon as I can. My phone number is 417-841-7997.
Awesome. Well, Joey, thank you so much for coming on the show. This is an awesome one that I have learned probably more than any of the other ones I've done so far. And we'll have to go back and take notes. But thank you so much for coming on. I had a blast, man.
Well, you too. Thank you, Cam. I appreciate everything you're doing.
Jade's Jigs, based out of Southwest Missouri, make finesse jigs without the lead. Jade's Jigs are made with an eco-friendly tin bismuth alloy that weighs less than lead, meaning you can get the same water displacement and profile size with less weight on your finesse presentation for the fish to feel. Jade's Jigs offers a variety of styles, including Ned heads, finesse EWG heads, and skirted finesse jigs, and they are ready to ship, so you get the custom quality without the custom weight. If all of that wasn't enough, they flat out catch fish. Head on over to jadesjigs.com, that's JADESJIGS.com, to see what they have to offer. And since you are a Faith and Fishing listener, you can use promo code FNF10 to save 10% on your order. Thank you again to Joey for coming on the show and being generous enough to give y'all, the listeners, the promo code FNF10 for 10% off at the online store. I hope y'all take advantage of that and go get some lead-free gear. Speaking of promo codes, don't forget to head over to SaveYourOutdoors.com and use promo code FNFP15 to save some money on your peace of mind with rod floats, bow floats, and other gear floats. Going back to the interview real quick, one thing that we talked about during the interview was the paint and how it chips easily, because you can't get the lead-free alloy Joey uses hot enough to cure the paint completely without losing the shape of the jig. But they have now started, and I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about this or not, so hopefully I don't end up spilling any beans here, but they have started testing a clear coat to put on the jigs for some extra durability, and I have noticed a big difference so far. But yeah, like I said, use those promo codes. Links will be in the show notes, as well as links to all things Faith and Fishing and Get Outdoors Pedal and Paddle. That's going to do it for this episode. Thanks again for listening. Y'all take care, and God bless. Thank y'all for listening to the Faith and Fishing podcast. Be sure to give us a rating and a review if you enjoy the show. And follow the show on Instagram at Faith and Fishing Pod or at Facebook.com/Faith and Fishing. Be sure to reach out to one of the amazing pastors in your community if you have questions about faith, and make sure you join the Faith and Fishing community on Facebook. Special thanks goes to Tyler Worrell, the graphic designer behind the Faith and Fishing logo. The Faith and Fishing podcast is produced by Cam Steele, and the music for the show is written, recorded, and performed by Jonathan Inthlanzy and Cam Steele. Thanks again for listening. Y'all take care, and God bless.